How about you hit that subscribe button? I promise I will upload semi-regularly, maybe. Thank you.
So, I accidentally lied. It's been close to 3 years since the last time I uploaded. I can't even begin to describe everything that's been going on since I've been gone from this platform. Just know that I've been through hell and back so many times that Satan knows me by name. Also, my mental and physical disabilities have finally caught up to me, so functioning like your average 25-year-old has become null and void for my body plan. Anyways, hello all you Appleseeds, both new and old. Welcome to my YouTube channel, where I post art and my lovely voice. I talk about whatever I want for whoever cares, so if you like this content, be sure to give those subscribe and like buttons a tap, and let's get on to the video. So, growing up, I'd always loved animals and cartoons. Weird combination, I know. The tism be tisming, and the ADHD didn't help on top of that. Because of this, I always found myself constantly scavenging for as much knowledge, content, and real-life experiences related to those two subjects just to feed the monster that is hyperfixation. Now, in hindsight, I should have known I was a furry. I was the type of primary to middle school kid that would tell people that I had a tail or that I was part cat. I was also a cat for like 12 Halloween straight by choice. These are stories for another time, but I digress. Loving both cartoons and animals made me susceptible to having an unfortunate obsession with many Disney IPs, as well as any animated movie or show that showcased animals anthropomorphized in some way. The Lion King was and still is my favorite Disney IP, unfortunately. Or maybe fortunately, however way you want to look at it. But I digress. We do a lot of that in this video. At some points, I even wanted to be those animals, sometimes finding myself genuinely butthurt that I wasn't born some cool half-human, half-animal hybrid. Thinking back on it, it makes sense that I'm a Therian now. The desire was so strong that I even found myself dreaming multiple times that I could shapeshift into different animals, and that since I was an animal now, I didn't have to go to school, so I'd just walk out of class. Which, yeah, I was usually in school in these dreams for some reason. Call it trauma. Of course, with me being the little hyperfixated nerdling I was as a kid, I was also a very, very avid reader. Side note, raise your hand if you used to read books by the dozen as a kid and now can barely pick up a book. I see you, burnt out little fuck. Go drink some water. So by the time I was in 4th grade, I was reading at a 12th grade level, according to my teachers, and the AR reading system. That was mostly because I craved knowledge and information, and the school library was free. Now, going back to it being 4th grade was when I essentially changed the course of my life forever. I was in the school library's chapter book section, looking for something new and interesting to read. I'd read most of the books that were in the library at the time, so I was really, really looking. After a few minutes of searching, I saw a book with a cat on the spine, and I immediately grabbed it to read the summary. And that was the start of my 16-year Warrior Cats obsession. And if you know anything about ADHD, you know I went hard in the paint! All throughout the rest of elementary, middle, and high school, I did nothing but absorb Warrior Cats content, which led me to becoming part of the fandom and thus participating in making some of the buttloads of art and content within the fandom, both then and now, and now. I drew so much fan art. I've made a few animations, and my artwork went from being random self-portraits in anime to murder cats. Obviously, I'm exaggerating to some extent, but the anime drawings and self-portraits slowed down in frequency compared to all the Warrior Cats drawings that I found myself doing. All I would draw was Warrior Cats. I had my own OC, my own clan, an origin story, unfinished forever, roleplay groups, the whole shebang. With this being my hyperfixation turned special interest, next to Pokemon, which also contributed to my furry transition, which is also a video for another day. It was no secret to anyone that knew me, both online and off, that I loved this series, or that I at least enjoyed cats a little more than most people and collected random herbs for no reason at all. Now, dear viewer, you of course see the title of this video. I hear your incredibly redundant question. What does this have to do with being a furry? Well, it doesn't. Sort of. Most furries who originated from the Warrior Cats fandom became furries because their love for Warrior Cats, with it being what I like to call furry adjacent, their access to the internet, the amount of individualism and community that manifested in the form of fandom and OCs, and the ability to create an animal-based persona that they used to represent their identity created a strikingly similar social structure to the furry fandom. I know I'm doing a lot of yapping, but that is my thing. Let me yap. Hell, the amount of personas that, including mine at one point, are just retconned Warrior Cats OCs is numerous and still counting. However, the way I became a furry was somewhat different. While, yes, being furry adjacent meant that I'd find myself in spaces where the two communities mixed, and thus the previously mentioned causes did play a part in coming to the fluff side, the truth is, I was always a furry. I was just in denial my entire adolescence. Allow me to explain. You ever heard of the phrase, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink? Well, think of the factors I mentioned earlier as the horse owner. Now, think of the furry fandom as the water. I'm the horse. And I absolutely refused to drink for 7 to 8 years. I treated that water like people treated Aquafina during 2020. Not only was I scared of the water, I was scared of getting made fun of for drinking the water, and I was scared of people even thinking I wanted the water. So for years, I just pretended I wasn't thirsty. That's an unnecessarily in-depth metaphor to say that I treated the concept of being a furry and the furry fandom like an estranged dad. Thankfully, only one of them gave me daddy issues, and the other one came from it. But I digress! Traumedy aside, I essentially spent years denying that my interest in warriors was because I was inherently a furry. I've always been interested in anthropomorphic characterizations of non-human characters, but the stigma around being a furry and the furry fandom definitely deterred me from wanting to associate myself with the label. That, and because of the fact that I drew Warrior Cats characters but in a way that a furry would, I got accused of being a furry multiple times over by people who thought it was gross. And every time, I would always just reply with, no, it's just a cat from a book series I read. Even when I stopped having distinct hate for furries, I didn't want to identify with the label because I didn't want people who already teased me for it to then find out that they were right. I essentially held off on identifying with the label out of spite and general annoyance with being labeled by people who weren't me, especially since those people had a very narrow understanding of what being a furry was in the first place. It's like, imagine if you didn't know what ducks or birds were, so one day you stumble upon a duck. You ask what it is, and someone tells you that it's a duck. So now you start calling every bird that you see a duck. Not every bird is a duck, obviously, and not everyone who draws animals with human personalities is a furry. It was this false equivalence that always irritated me. It wasn't until one of my favorite Warrior Cats artists got a fursuit of the Warrior Sona that I finally started to kind of drop the wall. After years of denial, I was in college when I finally said to myself, I know what you are. And I made myself a persona. At first, it was a cat named Bunky, but after transing my gender, I transed my species. Twice. Every time I'm reminded that ADHD likes to inject itself into every part of your life, and every time I lose 1 year off my life. But I digress. Nowadays, if I get the itch for a new species, I just make a new persona that represents a certain aspect of my personality. I still get the odd, ew, you're a furry, from select groups of people, but at this point, not only do I not really care anymore, I'm 25, I'm too old to care about that kind of judgment, but most of the people I care about, if not all, don't care about my hobby. It's not really something that impacts me personally anymore because it doesn't matter. I know a lot of Warrior Cats fans turned furries have very different experiences with how they descended into furry hell. So since we're at the end here, leave a comment telling me how you got into either fandom. Did the stigma also put you off for a while? When did you realize you were a furry? And lastly, why haven't you subscribed yet? The button's right there. And don't forget to give this video a like and a comment as well. Apple out!